Welcome to World of Marketing Podcast, a Foster Web Marketing production. Here's your host, Tom Foster.
Hey everybody, it's Tom Foster on the World of Marketing, and today we are in the studio, and thanks Matt Tate for setting this up for us. And I've got my buddy, it's been a good friend for 10 years now?
It's been 10 years. Yeah.
Kevin Mottley from Richmond, Virginia came up last night, appeared to Alexandria office to meet with us all day about marketing and strategy.
Yeah.
Because Kevin is the brain injury guy.
That is my niche.
That is your niche.
Yeah.
And so Kevin, how long have you been doing brain injury?
Brain injury started in my practice not long after I opened my own law firm.
Right.
So I started my law firm in 2009, March 1st, 2009. And I think by 2010, I had my first brain injury case. I didn't really know or think of it as a brain injury case, though.
Now, did that come in directly, or was that like a referral, or how did that come about?
It was a referral, but it was a referral that is unlike any other referral I'll ever probably have again, because it was a lawyer who was upstairs in the same little building I had opened my law firm in, who just wandered downstairs one day and said, "Hey, I've got this case. Can you handle it?" And it was a personal injury case involving some really serious injuries, one of which was a brain injury, but I never really viewed it that way. All I saw were the objective injuries that were there. The good news is that just focusing on those objective, like orthopedic injuries, things like that, and not focusing on the brain injury side of the case didn't really matter in that case, because there was limited insurance coverage available. It was basically like a $300,000 case. That was the limit of the policy. So, and we maxed that out because the injuries are pretty horrific. So I really never had to focus on the brain injury side of that case.
But how did you... Okay, so this is really good, because this is exactly what we've been talking about.
Right.
This lawyer that lived upstairs is not a brain injury lawyer.
No.
Right? Is he even a personal injury lawyer?
He tried to do a little of everything.
Right,
and
exactly.
He was kind of a generalist. If he had a niche at all, it was representing people in the military. And he would...
We were just talking about that.
We were, yeah. So he had that little niche because he used to be in the Army, and when I opened my firm, I opened with a laptop. And my cousin, who's an attorney in the suburbs of Richmond, very graciously said, "Why don't you start your firm in my building? I've got an extra office." So I started with a laptop and a little cubbyhole office in her building, and he just happened to be upstairs.
And started with this case that got referred to you.
Yeah.
And how did you determine that there was a brain injury component to it?
Just reviewing the records and just the horrific nature of the crash was one thing. But actually what caused the light bulb to kind of go off in my head at that time about the client having a brain injury was not really something I saw in the medical records. It was interacting with the client. The client had a hard time putting together thoughts, had a hard time remembering things. She obviously had some memory issues. And this was a horrific crash. She was a passenger in a car being driven by her best friend. And her best friend fell asleep, veered off the road, and going, a good speed, I'm not sure how fast, probably 50, 55 miles per hour, hit a steel telephone pole, like straight on.
Oh, my God.
And the friend was killed. Our client survived. And the case was what's called an underinsured motorist case.
Right.
Meaning that her friend didn't have a ton of insurance.
Right.
Luckily, our client had what she had. She had some UIM coverage, which was pretty good. So we got that resolved.
But I guess, and that's congratulations, and of course,
that was the first
having
one.
better insurance. But that was the first one, and that gave you the taste for brain injury, like doing more of those kinds of.
I had the thought of doing brain injury cases for years before that. I used to be a defense lawyer at a large Am Law 100 firm, and the name of the firm has changed over the years, but at that time, we did a lot of defense work for the railroads, and so I cut my teeth as a young lawyer defending railroads and personal injury cases, which was great at the time because in those days, it was the late 90s, early 2000s, big firms were getting out of the personal injury defense work because the rates were rather low. The railroads, however, they were self-insured and they paid the fees, and the rates were a little lower, but they were still being done by some of the larger firms, and we just happened to be one of those firms. So it was good for me as a young lawyer because I got trial experience as a young lawyer, and in those days, in a big firm setting, that was not the easiest thing to get. So you were a litigator, not really a trial lawyer. I met a judge up here one time. He's a retired judge now, but back when he was practicing law, he and I had a case together, and nice guy from Fairfax, and he called lawyers in the big firms little gators, not litigators, because little gators, because they didn't try a lot of cases, right. and so I always thought that was funny. So I was a little gator, at the time, and I was fortunate enough to have some opportunities to try some cases on the defense side, and I saw some brain injury. And
I see.
And I thought,
when you're a defense lawyer.
Yeah, and I thought to myself, if I ever go out on my own, I always had an itch to start something myself, and that seed was there not long after I started practicing law, and because I'm a creator, I like to create things and build things. Entrepreneurial, whatever. Yeah, that's right. And I thought, well, if you do ever open your firm, wouldn't it be neat to do these cases on the plaintiff side, and wouldn't it be neat to do cases that the stakes are high in and that are complex? They're not easy. They're intellectually stimulating, and where you can use your skills as a trial lawyer to really make a difference in a significant matter. That was kind of the thought, and brain injury fit that like a glove because they're not easy cases. They're
but the settlements are very high.
Can be.
Yeah, right. I mean, like they're.
And we can talk all day about why a settlement in one case is high and a settlement in another case is not so high. And I mean, I can give you.
Isn't that lawyering?
Yeah, well, that's part of that. It has a lot to do with who that trial lawyer is. I mean, I've talked to lawyers before who have had very valuable brain injury cases, but
didn't know it. Right. And like you were just telling me this story earlier.
Yeah.
About your friend that's a judge that called you up.
Yes.
So tell that story.
Yeah. So I have an acquaintance, long time dear friend who happens to be a judge, and we were chatting one day, and he called me up, and he was saying, that he had a brain injury case in his court that week, but the lawyer that was pursuing it really didn't put it together that that's what the case was, and so he
just tried it as a regular car accident case.
Yeah, and so and that happens. I've seen that happen. Before, and
that's lawyers leaving money on the table. For not only for the client but for them.
Yes, yeah, it can definitely turn into that.
It can turn a $200,000 case into $1 million case.
It can. I mean, we just settled a case in the last couple of months where it was a fender bender.
Yeah, went on your. You all can look and read about that case on his website.
Right. It's if you go on my website, www.mottleylawfirm.com with 2 T's, Mottley with 2 T's.
Yeah.
Look under results. You'll see a $2 million settlement that was put up there fairly recently. And there's a picture of the crash. And it's the kind of crash that you probably pass once a week going home from work. I mean, it was a little fender bender at a stoplight. And, but it was the sort of thing that led to a life-changing, mild traumatic brain injury. And we can get into why that...
Most lawyers would not see that.
No, they might try it as a soft tissue injury case, is what we call it, or a neck and back case, and that was there too. And you could have settled that case all day long, pre-suit with the claims adjuster, and think you have a great little settlement in that case, and that's what it quote unquote should settle for. In reality, though, it was so much more. I mean, the client had a very complicated medical history that involved a serious brain injury concussion when she was 17 years old. So she had this prior brain injury. And if you do what I do, you know that prior brain injuries are not necessarily a bad thing in these cases. A lot of lawyers will see a prior brain injury and say, oh, well, this is going to be tough because you've already had a brain injury before.
Well, doesn't that make you more susceptible to another brain injury?
Makes you more susceptible to more complicated outcomes in the subsequent injury, which is what happened with her. I mean, she had some ongoing issues. But
did you find that out after you took on the case and you did due diligence?
Yeah.
Did you take it on thinking this is just a fender bender and I'm only going to...
No, I didn't.
You knew it.
Yeah, this case was referred to me by an expert who's called a life care planner, who I had worked with before.
And this person knew that this was a brain injury?
She suspected it was. And so she sent the client my way, and so I took a look at it, and sure enough, it was a brain injury case, a challenging one, just because the nature of the impact was relatively minor. It's a low impact case, not much visible property damage to the cars. So when you see that as a lawyer, you already know that this is going to be an uphill fight to get this client what she really deserves. And in fact, the first year of the case, these cases take a long time, the defense lawyer was telling me, look, my insurance company ain't buying it. They don't believe this is that serious of a case. And so these are not, speaking in lawyers' language, these are not slam dunk cases. They're not quick money cases. These are not layup cases. These are cases that, the way I do them, they're all consuming. I mean, I spend...
But you can, by that investment, you can take a case that, maybe settles for, like you said, maybe $100,000, $200,000.
Right.
And turn that into a $2 million case.
You can, yeah. And that's, if it's prepared the right way.
We talked about this, and you've been doing this for a long time. You know a lot of lawyers. You know a lot of you're a personal injury lawyer yourself.
Right.
You know a lot of them. You attend a lot of conferences. You stay in the know. And tell me if I'm wrong, but a lot of these guys don't know that they have the opportunity for a brain injury case.
Yeah.
They look at, it's a car accident or soft, and that's as far as they go.
I think if you're a high volume personal injury lawyer doing a lot of neck and back cases, and you got a lot of files on your desk or in your file drawer, the chances are you've got a brain injury case in there, maybe multiple brain injury cases.
Yeah.
And maybe it's that the insurance coverage that's available makes it so that it doesn't matter. There's just not a lot of coverage there.
Sure.
I mean, if there's $25,000 or $50,000 worth of coverage, it probably doesn't matter. But if there is a commercial defendant or the possibility of a legal theory that could tap you into a commercial defendant and their coverage,
like a trucking company,
or any sort of
like
commercial
train, the railroads.
Yeah, any commercial operation.
Right.
The possibility for the client to be paid an amount that fairly pays them back for what they've lost is there. So, you owe it to really think about that. It ought to be on your intake forms. It ought to be on your, case review templates where you're, okay, is there possibly a brain injury?
Right.
I know that some of the biggest brain injury verdicts, settlements, et cetera, that I've seen before, some of them arise from situations where the first lawyer who had the case
missed it,
just totally missed the brain injury. And I'm talking big
and that's
cases.
Leaving so much money on the table for you.
Yeah.
So, we talked about this before. Like I asked you, I was like, would you be willing to, review cases for personal injury lawyers to see if there's a brain injury component that they should go after?
Yeah, not only willing to do it, that's what I do.
Right.
I mean, people call me, no strings attached. I happily
take a look at the case.
Take a look at the case,
whether they got it or not.
And I'm happy to tell people my thoughts on it and good luck with the case.
Right.
Or if you want me to partner with you, let's figure out an arrangement that makes sense for both of us.
So you can take the whole case on, or you could partner with them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've done that. There are some practical guardrails to that sort of an arrangement. I mean, if I get the feeling that, partnering on a case with someone, meaning both firms are expected to chip in and really make an effort.
Well, you've had a lot of success with that.
Yeah. Then if I get the sense that is going to work, that's cool. Sometimes I don't get the feeling that's going to work, and so
right.
In those situations, I'm more likely to say, look, let's have a fee sharing arrangement that meets all the requirements and guidelines under the ethical rules, but let us take this. We'll take all the expenses. We'll lead the charge on all the legal work. And so it just depends on the particulars of the situation. I've done each of those sort of scenarios with different lawyers. And it's all what they would like to. Some people just don't. They're like, you take it. We don't want to have anything to do with it. Just keep us informed. And that's
another thing is that you've got the bank to support these cases, to try these cases.
They are not.
They're not cheap.
They're not cheap. I mean, these cases, to bring them to a conclusion, are typically involving out-of-pocket fronted expenses to finance the case, if you will, in the six figures.
Yeah.
That's pretty common, pretty typical.
Yeah.
I've had them on the lower end of that, maybe high five figures. So that's $100,000, $200,000 easy. Mm-hmm. They got to have that in the bank to be able to do these cases. Yeah, or have some way of
right.
doing that.
Right.
Yeah, and that's part of the territory in these cases is being prepared to properly finance the case. We took a case over that fairly recently from another lawyer who had it and just dropped the client, just got out of the case, just dropped it and didn't really do anything. And on the way out the door, they in fact damaged the client because they non-suited the case, which a non-suit is you get one opportunity in Virginia to drop a state case and then refile it. But you only get one of those opportunities. And so it's kind of it's a valuable thing to have in your hip pocket in case something really bad goes wrong in the case. You can kind of pull the ejection lever and then start fresh again. So it's a valuable right. Well, the attorney not only didn't do anything with the brain injury case, on their way out the door, they non-suited it and left the client kind of hanging there. And luckily, this client found us, and we agreed to. I felt so horribly for her. I agreed to take the case, even though it's who knows? I mean, what it's going to turn out to be like.
What's the lesson there? Don't non-suit the case. Like, refer it to somebody that can handle it if it's too complicated for you.
Yeah,
you don't have the bank, you don't have the purse to do it. Don't be,
Yeah, I don't know why that happened with that particular file, with that particular attorney, but one of the things.
But you hear that stuff all the time.
I do, and one of the things when I saw what had happened, and I mean, one of the thoughts that occurred to me was this attorney was not. They, for whatever reason, they weren't up to this, and they got scared, and they were a younger attorney they're probably a fantastic attorney,
sure, but not with this.
But this was something that for whatever reason caused them to say, I got to get out of this, and I've seen that many times.
But that's stuff that makes people, I got to get out of this. That's what you do every day.
In our practice, we have a very low case volume. So I typically will have less than 10 brain injury cases going on at one time.
Right.
And they're staggered out, all phases of litigation. So we have some in pre-litigation investigation. We have some that have just been filed. We have some that are set for trial. And that's all intentional. I like to I refer to our cases, I think I've told you this before on another podcast, we call our cases bespoke cases, meaning you've got a nice coat on there. It's probably tailored by someone who knows your measurements. Every thread was thought out for you. But the next guy might have a different coat that's just for him. That's kind of how we think of and refer to our cases. And you only get that kind of attention to detail, customization, et cetera, by spending a lot of time, on that matter. Your fine tailors are going to have a lower volume of coats they're making for people than, say, a big global manufacturer who has all their
quality's nowhere near.
Yeah, who has all their coats made in a sweatshop somewhere,
right,
or in another part of the world.
But that's a great point and a great analogy. Like big firms, these big mega firms, and we know who they are. They're volume-based business.
Yes,
and they're pushing those cases through, and so many of those have opportunity in them that they're not taking advantage of because their job is to push them through.
Yeah, I think just as a matter of numbers, it probably happens. I have very good friends and colleagues in some of the larger firms who I have a great deal of respect for, and they seem to, recognize when they've got a big one, and they, kick it up a notch, I guess you could say, on those. And we talk about competency to handle a case. When I started my firm, one of the first books I read was, who was the guy's name? It was an ABA publication. Thunberg was his name, and he wrote some great little books about how to start your own law firm. And I think the first chapter or something, and I read these about the time I was starting my firm, because it's the only thing I knew to read.
Sure.
The first chapter was, I think it was where he said, you're competent to do this. You have a law license. So if you have a law license, you're competent to do this according to the law. And so that was comforting to me at that time. I was like, yeah, I can start this law firm. I've got the law license. I'm competent to do this. But we all know that the reality is when you get into certain areas of the law that are highly specialized, that require, the financing for the situation or some expertise in a certain niche, we all know that is really not correct, when you get to an area where you need some help.
Right.
You're competent, and you can learn it. Yeah, you can learn it. read up on how to handle a certain type of case. You can talk to other lawyers.
But you're not going to maximize. You might be able to do it, but you're not going to be able to see all the pieces and parts like you would be able to, maximize the value of that.
Yeah, not the. I don't think the first go round you could kind of know all of the little trap doors in these cases, or the things you can do to make your life and your case better. You need experience. You need to go around the block a few times on a certain type of case, like a brain injury case, to have seen some things. And I see new stuff in every one of my cases. And one of my habits is to dictate for myself after every case, particularly a trial. I do a little memo to myself called a "What Did I Learn" memo.
Nice.
And that's, I view this process as like a snowball that the more it goes down the hill, I'm just picking up more. So whatever happens in the case, you win the case, you lose the case. You win, but you don't win what you think you should have won. You settle the case for maybe a value that's less than you had hoped. There are reasons for all of this. There are reasons cases go well. There are reasons they don't go well. And I try to it's just like this massive snowball where I'm trying to learn more every time. That's one habit I've got. Another habit I've got is I try to pick a new skill in every case I have to focus on. So,
interesting.
So I know, I picked this up from Mark Lanier, who's one of the best trial lawyers on the planet down in Houston. I've been to some of his seminars, and he gave me this idea of, every time you have a case going to trial, pick a new thing to learn and be good at in that trial, so that you know that when you try that case, you have tried the best case you've ever tried. And that's really, I think, a cool concept, is because if you're doing that, if you're learning something new and you're implementing it into your next trial, on top of everything else that you've learned, you're guaranteed, even if you lose the case, to have tried the best case of your life. Maybe a losing case, but at least you tried the best case that you've ever tried. And so that's another thing I do.
Yeah. Well, we've been working together for many, many years now, and you've had tremendous success in getting referrals from other lawyers, right?
Yeah.
And referrals coming in from past clients that you worked with. Mm-hmm. And so if you guys out there have a case, or if, you don't know if you have a case,
right,
let's have Kevin take a look at it.
Sure. And it's not just limited to Virginia.
Yeah.
I mean, my practice is statewide in Virginia, but
you can help anybody, right?
I've gotten calls from around the country on brain injury cases.
Yeah.
And I refer cases out, around the country to, I mean, it's not uncommon for us to get, I don't know why this is, maybe it's a population thing, but California, we get so many calls from our website content from Californians who've had a brain injury. And a lot of times it's, or maybe I think another area is the Northwest. Like,
that just shows how powerful this website is.
That's right. That's right.
That's all that is.
Yeah, that's sheer
and it's
power.
Just beating the pants off all the websites in California if they're coming all the way here to Virginia. What's going on?
Yeah, so we get people, it'll be 3 a.m, when the email comes in through DSS.
Yeah.
But it's a person who's had a brain injury, or who has a relative who's had a brain injury, and we can't obviously help them, at least primarily in California, because we're not California lawyers, but we try to refer them out, to people out there. So we refer cases.
You could refer it to a personal injury lawyer to handle just that part of it, and you handle the brain injury part. Right?
Yeah, like I said, we will go to other states as long as the rules in that state allow a non. You have to be admitted into the courts there to practice in that one particular case. But some states are really they disfavor that. Others are different. I don't know about California, but I would imagine that there's a way to appear in California. Pro hac vice is what they call it. So,
wow, some Latin here.
Right.
All right, my man. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the World of Marketing podcast. I think this is your like third or fourth time.
I was doing the math. It's the fourth time.
Fourth time.
Since 2013. So, yeah. So when did you start the podcast? It was probably...
Matt, when did we start the podcast? Years ago. When we were in Fairfax.
The first one I did was at...
like 2017, I think.
The first one I did was at the Arlington Renaissance Hotel.
That's right. And then that was the picture that was on our homepage for a long time. You and I at the table.
Yes. That was...
That's right.
That was
during a GLM conference.
That was a GLM conference. And I think that was the first one I did. And then the next one was at the Fairfax studio. So, and
then you did one here in
Alexandria. So this is a wonderful place you got here. I'm so glad you moved here. I take the train up here because I'm in Richmond. And so the thought is I can take the train, not stress out over traffic. And the other thought is I can get some work done on the train.
Right.
The problem is I don't know what it is, but when I get in a train and you get the rocking of the train,
it's time to snooze.
I am just out.
Yeah.
So
there's nothing wrong with that. Have a little break.
Yeah, it's better. Don't do that when you're driving, but when you're
take the train.
Take the train. You can do it.
Train is wonderful.
Yeah. So thanks a lot.
No TSA, none of that stuff. People are walking around. It's very. Yeah, it's nice.
I know. It's a nice way to go. So.
All right, buddy.
Thank
you so much. Okay, so if they want to talk to you, go to the website, MotleyLawFirm.com.
MotleyLawFirm.com with two T's.
Right.
Yeah.
2 T's. Your email's Kevin@MotleyLawFirm.com.
It's my full name, so Kevin Mottley.
Kevin Mottley. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
And if you want to call them, go to the number on the website and give them a shout.
That's right.
But yeah, I recommend, obviously, Kevin, to any personal injury or any lawyer that needs to have a great brain injury focused attorney that's really good at it, has a great track record. Check out his case results. He's worked with some of the best out there. All right, buddy. Tom Foster and Kevin Mottley on the World of Marketing. You all have a fantastic day, and thanks for tuning in.